Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon and happy Monday. Welcome to Money Monday. I'm Executive Pastor Grant. I'm so excited to be with you today on the Juice Radio and Talk Show as we prepare to go into our new series on this month. We're talking about effective cash management. How do we get to a point where we have understanding of the cash that's coming in and our expenses going out? And how do we get to a positive position so that we always have what we need or acknowledgement of where we may need to push some levers, open up other additional streams of income. But how are we managing what we already have coming in? So today is going to be exciting, very exciting today as we talk about cash flow management, ensuring our stability, and how do we grow it. Right, we're planting good seeds in the earth, and we want to ensure that we are doing the necessary nurturing and watering so that it can prosper and bloom, and so that our businesses and our ministries can flourish. So right now, we're just going to run our intake so that you can see all of the great things that you'll hear from the Juice Radio and Talk Show. And we look forward to jumping right into our discussion on today, cash flow management.
Welcome to the Juice Radio Talk Show. 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 Reality TV's church reviews. Let's talk happy love and marriage lifestyle. Come and talk with us. Come and share with us. Come and laugh with us. Come on and pray with us.
Regina Clovis, special guest. You should be following your lead. Bless. Subscribe on YouTube. Listen on podcasts. We live on IG and Facebook. This episode is sponsored by Truth and Triumph Ministries.
Hey, good afternoon again. Good morning, even good evening, depending on when you're watching. Today, we are going into a new series. We just finished up conversations around solvency, around safety and ensuring our budget and cash flow management from a different perspective, different lens. But today we're going to talk about cash flow management in itself. What does it mean to us? How very important it is? Because even though you have a business, we've gotten our business started. We've gone through a lot of the strategies that we talked about before. How do we structure our businesses? How do we get it into operation? How do we onboard our staff? How do we move forward and grow the business? Now we want to make sure that we are watching and managing our cash flow. One of the simplest terms about cash flow, it talks about really how do you manage the cash that you have or equivalent to cash, right? So there's opportunity where you're using maybe credit cards or Cash Apple Pay, Cash App. There are a lot of different mediums and methods right now for the receipt of revenue coming into your business, which is wonderful. And so we really want to talk about how do you take that as you transfer these funds in and out of your business, and how do you track it? We want to talk about today, even on the frequency. Some of our business are very cash flow heavy, and I mean even the physical cash flow. And so we want to make sure that we're tracking that on a daily, sometimes even a weekly basis, so that we see where we are, that we have those type of targets. Sometimes we don't even think about that. What kind of target? In many instances, we are operating without a cash flow management plan. We are operating, but know this, if you don't have a plan to succeed, if you don't have any targets to hit, if you don't know your trajectory and where you want to go, it is most likely you won't get there. Because without a plan for success, you've already planned to fail. And so we want to make sure that we are allocating the appropriate time and understanding, right? Today, we're just bringing clarity, and all you're getting, get an understanding. We want to get clarity. What does cash management mean? And how does it help and enable us as we operate in business, operate in ministry, whatever you're anointing, whatever you've called to do, and you're leading in that space? Cash flow management is even important, even in your home life. Understanding where funds are coming in from, and then how do you maximize what you do have, and then how can you expand on that so that it grows more, right? And so one of the things you also want to talk about, not just about what's coming in, but how you are spending, right? Because the intent is, and we've taught this before, is that you get a gap. You get a gap in between what you are bringing in and what you are sending out as far as paying on your expenses and liabilities, so that the more you get in and the less you send out, the larger your gap. And so you can operate in the gap so that you can manage your business, so that you can grow the business, so that you have that additional savings set aside for emergency funding or contingency funding, or your phase two, whatever you have intended that has been placed on your heart that you want to go to your next level. Well, you can't move to your next level until you've had an opportunity to ensure that you're operating well in your first one. We want to make sure that we are operating well in our first one. And with that, we want to allow us to be able to have a better understanding even of what cash flow management is. And so one of the terms that we want to talk about today, right, is about velocity. How long does it take? What's the timing that passes between when you have to make a purchase, perhaps even with your business, you're actually buying supply. And so with buying supply, how long does it take you to extend out funding for your business and then actually receive back payment for it? So we want to say good morning to Bianca. Good morning. Glad you joined us today. And so what is that velocity? Does it take you 10 days between the time you paid and you actually receive some funding back? You actually get paid for it. That is so important because you want to know how long is something sitting on the shelf, or how long is something sitting in your storage, or how long is something sitting on the availability to make funds before you actually get it in your hands. And so sometimes that can even help you when you're talking about cash flow, making sure you are managing your inventory. Sometimes we're very aggressive. We're very aggressive, and we might put out a whole lot in retrieving our inventory, getting our inventory in, and then it is a significant amount of time before we are turning a profit, before we are making in revenue on what you've already spent. And so that's one of the reasons why you want to look at velocity. How long does it take between the time you actually extend capital or the time you leverage your credit to purchase something and the time you actually get it back? What is that delay? Because it's so important, because that impacts your cash flow cycle. How long am I extending it out before it actually comes back to me? And of course, within that cash flow cycle, we recognize that our intention is that what we spend out, we're going to get more than that in the return. We've added on the applicable fees, the applicable purchase amount, so that we have a gap between what we had to extend and what we are now getting back from others who are purchasing our services or our clothing. Maybe you're doing clothing, maybe you're doing perfume, maybe you're doing bags, whatever it is that you are now putting out in the marketplace. Even if you're offering a service, how long does that service take you to do before you are able to get the funding back? And the same as if you were making a salary, how much are you being paid for that hour's worth of work? And in many cases, there is a 2-week span before you're getting paid. Some cases they are paid monthly. And so you're looking at it even from that perspective when you're owning a business. What is the velocity between when you have extended your cash out and when you're getting it back? Because that plays a huge amount into how you manage your cash flow management. How do you look at the return on it and when it will be coming back to you? Because again, you'll need more access to capital depending on how long it takes you to get the money back. So if it is a long duration, you may have 30 days before you're able to get all your products and services together. Then you have an inventory that is already extended funds on that, but you have a return of the payment 30 days out. So then you have to think about it. How am I going to extend maybe a line of credit, or how am I going to allow for funds to be extended out that long, anticipating that it will return back, and it will turn back with interest, with a significant amount of a difference, so that we have a return on our investment. We have a return on what we distributed out. So you really have to look at that. Sometimes you may even operate in a business where you go into where you're collecting. So you have to add in on that additional funding as well. If you're extending out to other organizations, sometimes your business might work as a third party to another vendor. And perhaps you're getting the shirts together, you're getting whatever items you are selling, whatever you have available in the marketplace, and then you're getting it already packaged up, and then you're distributing it out to your client, your customer, and then they're paying you back for it. But again, you will have extended funds in order to be able to provide your service. So you really need to look at that velocity. How long does it take? And then again, how much does it take in volume? How much do you actually need to do? Because volume also, it impacts and influences your gross margin. How much are you getting? Because sometimes if you're purchasing from a vendor, If you're having an item that you're selling in the marketplace, the larger you purchase, the smaller or cost effective that you can be. But you got to think about it. You don't want to have a lot of inventory that's just sitting in the storehouse, a lot of inventory that's just sitting in the room. Thank you, Ms. Darnell. Thank you for joining in on today. You definitely don't want to have a lot of inventory just sitting around doing nothing. So that is very important, that you also maximizing the volume that you order. You look at it in comparison, because again, you're managing your cash flow. You also, in many aspects, you want to be a JIT, just in time. You want to order just enough to get what you need so that you can make your money and then order your next one. You don't want to have a significant amount of inventory sitting around, because you have to remember, depending on what type of market you're in, what kind of field you're in, it changes. Sometimes it's very seasonal. And so when you're ordering, and your hope, and we all know this, our desire is that we're going to expand our territory. We're going to go really big and large, but you need to also be maximizing, understanding your cash flow. What you have extended out and purchasing your inventory impacts what you have available to operate with. And so you never want to go too far without already having maybe some pre-orders. I always recommend that. Pre-orders, have people prepay to some degree. Always ask, if feasible, within your line of business for a deposit, because that lets you know that you have a sure interest, that they are willing to invest in what they're going to place with your organization, so that you won't hopefully incur a loss, especially if you're operating in a business where you're doing customization, where you're putting someone's specific design or specific name or specific brand. That's not something you can go back out in the marketplace out and just sell to somebody else. This is specific to them. And so when you're doing very specific custom t-shirts, custom cups, custom bags that are specific to an organization, specific to a group, you want to always make sure that you're getting an applicable deposit if you're not asking for it in totality. Because again, you are carrying the liability if something shifts or something changes, because you will be holding on to that inventory if they're not able to close the deal. So the more likely that you can retain your cash flow, that you can ensure that their solvency in far as closing the deal, is to make sure you had a marketable deposit on that request, on that order. And so you'll do that as you operate in your business, right? Especially if you're doing direct material. If you're doing direct and you're purchasing from another vendor, you're already releasing funds. Your cash has already left, or you have extended a line of credit, which means you now have a liability. So in essence, you have a cash differential where you will have to repay them for what they're giving you. And so you want to make sure and assure that you have the necessary funding to close the deal. And so even if it's indirect, which means the overhead is less cash for your business, meaning raw materials, spoilage, inventory shrinkage, these kind of things, accessing and controlling costs will increase your cash flow. Again, not only pushing for revenue, but also managing cost, managing your bottom line, getting a bigger gap. Your expenses will also help facilitate ensuring you have a greater cash flow, because you're not sending it back out the door, and you're not having to write checks back out to others to pay for what has allowed you to gain the business. You want to look at how you can do that very, very effectively. So one of the things you want to do is you want to manage it with your short and long-term goals. We talked about this before, how important it is to have a target, to have a goal. Because if you don't manage and monitor on a weekly basis, especially if you're in business, I'm business every day, you're monitoring to see how well we did today. Because how well you did today may give you an indication. It may be an indicator. It might be a way to recognize and acknowledge that you need to push hard on tomorrow. If today was slow, in most businesses, I would recommend that you have a daily target or at least a weekly target, because you don't want a whole month to go by and then you realize, we are way off. Because every month you have certain liabilities, certain bills that you have to pay and you have to meet every month. And so because you know that those are not changing, they may have some variances, right? It might be a little higher in the summer, might be a little higher during the winter when it's really extremely cold or extremely hot. Some bills do fluctuate during the time because of the usage. but overall, you will have an idea of what is your standard operating expenses to run your business for a month. I really recommend that you do that, that you have that kind of information, because when you have that information in your back pocket, when you have that knowledge and awareness of what does it take to run this business for a month, that helps you in your cash flow management process, because then you can project, if it takes me this much, if I need $1,000 to operate my t-shirt business in this month, then I need over that in order to be able to have revenue, in order to be able to not only meet my obligations, not only have the business be solvent, meaning we have a sense of stability, but I want to make money. I want to have an increase. And so that means I want to make sure that I know every day I task myself, especially if you are self-employed and you are the entrepreneur who is starting the business. I want to make sure that every day I am pushing toward my end of the month goal. Every day I want to be able to have a goal for what I need in order to stay stable throughout the month. And so sometimes you may not hit it on that day, and that's fine. Sometimes you may not even hit it on that week, but that gives you the fuel. That gives you the information. What is wisdom? Information. Knowledge has information applied. And so when you gain wisdom, you have experience, so you can take the knowledge that you have and apply it to it. So if this week we didn't meet our cash flow projections for this week, that lets us know next week we've got to push even harder. We've got to make up for what we didn't do on last week. We've got to go out and stretch to other clients. We've got to go out and stretch to other avenues of partnerships, more avenues of potential work, elements of work streams, new investment work streams. How do I now take what I know how to do, and how can it be applied to different fields of study, different marketplace areas that could also leverage what I bring to the table? Because what you have is valuable. That treasure that you have, that gifting that you have, that anointing that you have, that ability that you have, everybody can't do it. And so you have an opportunity then to take what you know how to do and then maximize it. And so we want to encourage you today that you need to have a strategy. You don't want to be like the wind, tossed to and fro with no target, no goals, no idea of where you're going. You know you want to advance. We know that. You know you want to get ahead. We know that. But to what degree? What should you be expecting from the end of the 30 days, 31 days? Where should we sit at the end of that? And that is very helpful tool to you to know, because sometimes we have a false impression that things are well until they're not. And that's not how we want to operate in business. Sometimes we have that. We have the rosy glass on where we feel like, oh, things are well until they're not. You want to be an innovator. You want to be an entrepreneur. You want to be thinking ahead. You want to have foresight. You want to have discernment. You want to have understanding. We talked about knowing your business, knowing the cycles of your business. And one of the best ways that helps you enable and ensure the solvency of the business, stability of the business, is knowing your cash flow management plan. So another thing you want to do is also to consider, how do you manage your working capital? So you have this money, right? You started your business. You have an opportunity to gain revenue. Now, then how do you maximize that? How do you manage it? It's just like you can have, the scripture even talks about that, having a sack with a hole in it. And so sometimes even when we have the ability and we get funding in, we get capital in, we're not managing it. And so at the end of the day, what we did have, we don't see any benefit from it. So that's why it's so important that we start to evaluate, how do we manage it? Our daily sales outstanding, right? The average number of days it takes to receive cash in, and what are customers actually purchasing. That is a good insight of how do I manage my working capital so that I'm buying the right thing. Have you done this before? You might invest in one area and you find out that was good for a minute, but the moment has changed and you weren't tracking fast enough. You're still ordering from where everybody was last year. The idea is that you stay with the flow of what's happening, your demand of your customers. And so even as you have working capital coming in, how are you thinking about, how can I boost it? How can I take what I do have in my hand and let it grow and flourish for me, right? How do I manage it in such a way that I take the little bit and it looks like a whole lot? And so a lot of that consider is if you have accounts payables where you have to take creditors, right? How long does it take creditors to pay you back? People that owe you. Meaning, if you do extend that out to some of your clients or customers, how long does it take to get that cash back in? So that's one of the ways that you grow and maximize your cash by managing, understanding when funds are coming in and out of your business. Again, another way we already talked about, how do you manage your inventory? How do you make sure that you have enough, but not too much? And sometimes it's a very thin line. It is a very thin line. How do I have just enough, but not too much? Enough to meet my client base, but not too much where things are sitting around and getting stale. It's the same thing if you think about it. If you open up a restaurant, oh my goodness, you open up a restaurant or you open up a bakery, you don't want to make too much that you end up having a whole lot to throw away. That's wasted money. That's wasted goods. That's money that you could have managed in another way for something else. And so similar to that, we have to do that when we appropriate funding in our organizations. Are you putting the funding? Are you maximizing your capital that you do have in the best place to give you the maximum reward, the maximum positive response from your client base, maximum positive response from the people that you're working with, maximum positive response in your ministry? Is it being applied in the area that will give you the greatest return? Because sometimes we put money into areas that are most convenient. The easiest way to do it. Sometimes the easiest way to do it is the most expensive, right? The most easy way to do it sometimes is often the most expensive. So that's not helping your cash flow. Sometimes it's better to look for efficiency. And that's what we want to operate from in many capacities to help undergird our cash flow, is by ensuring that we're working to the maximum of efficiency. Because then you eliminate all the things that cost time, all the things that cost unwarranted expenditures, all the things that cause unwarranted pressure on the business. And so when you start to eliminate those things that you can do without, you start to focus in and hone in on the things that are really bringing you the most positive response. What is bringing you the most positive increase in your business? You can consider it's a tightening. You know, you get more juice out of the lemon when you squeeze it harder, right? And so sometimes I know it's very difficult for us when we talk about you want to squeeze it down. How can I maximize more? How can I look for process improvements? How can I look for most efficient, effective people to do certain things? Have you thought about that? In some capacities, we haven't operated the most efficient because we haven't put our resources to what they do the best. And so sometimes efficiency also aligns to resourcing, making sure we have our resources, our team, our staff assigned and working on the one thing that they do well. Because in many assets, they can make it quicker and shorter and better than it can be if we give that to someone else. So that is another method in which we can align to a cash management flow, is look at maximizing what we already have in our hand. That's what we're talking about. What do you already have, and where are there ways right now today that you can tighten it up, tighten the bolts up, so that it gives you more strength and so that you gain advancement with what you already have. Sometimes that aligns to not trying to be all things to everybody. We talked about that before. As you look at your services and your products, certainly we want to create multiple streams of income. We do, but we also want to look at efficiency. If that multiple stream of income costs you more than what you can get back in, that may not be the one. You want to look at another stream or activity that you can do in your business that creates cash flow and does not become a cash cow, that isn't eating up your money, and that is allowing you to move forward and advance in it, and is bringing more in to create more gap in your organization. And so that's what we're talking about today. How do you create more cash flow? And some of the thoughts that we've had already is looking at how we're managing what we already have. Your staff that you already have today, how are we managing them well? The income that is already coming in today, how do we manage them already? How we manage our relationships, some of our relationships that we have with other partners. Where are there areas where we can work together? Maybe where they were paying you in 30 days or 60 days, maybe you want to trim it down to 30 days so that you get your cash flow back in sooner. Maybe you want to establish a line of credit so that you don't have immediate release of funds with some of the partners or third parties that may be assisting you in facilitating your inventory. When you do that, that gives you operating expense room to breathe because you don't have to release it immediately. You have a chance to use that for something else while you get the merchandise in, get the merchandise out for sale, and then you have your revenue coming back in. So today we certainly wanted to encourage you in our cash management series that we are starting today. There is a lot more to come. We're going to talk about cash management systems. There's opportunities so that if you're like me, you're busy, you have a lot of things going on. There are some efficient cash management systems that you can purchase, software that can help you in managing your numbers so that you can plug in or have someone from your staff plug in, and then they are having the opportunity to be able to have printouts and they're able to have diagrams that show you exactly where you are. It's not where you have to go back and use a calculator anymore. You have access to system software that can help you ensure you are tracking and monitoring. You cannot expect what we don't inspect. And so we want to encourage you today to continue to know that the favor of the Lord is upon you and you will thrive in what he's given unto you. And so we're just going to operate in wisdom and expect things to happen bigger and greater in this year. This is our year of advancement. Peace and blessings to you from Pastor Grant. God bless you.